Hello, my name is Kinley. I have a couple of reptiles, but today I want to talk about the pros and cons of having a chameleon. So this is Marvin. He's mad because he's about to go to bed. Hi, pretty boy. I think he's scared of my hair a little bit. He likes me a little bit better when I have my hair up for some reason. I think the long hair kind of scares him. He's super cute. He is a panther chameleon. He's an amylobe, I believe is the way that you say it. How old are you? He's maybe a little over 2 years old. Oh, you got it, bud? He's probably gonna hide there in the back. But first I want to tell the story about how I got Marvin. Well, Marvin is kind of technically my first reptile. I kind of just got the idea in my head one day. I really want a chameleon and I found him from a guy on Facebook. I'm doing a ton of research and I know it's going to be a challenge, but I'm up for the challenge. It's a really big learning curve. Like I said, I knew it would be a challenge. I knew that it was going to be something a little bit on the harder side, but I did not realize how difficult it was going to be. The guy on Facebook, he tells me he has all of the supplies that I'll need, that I'll only just have to kind of get bugs periodically, but that he comes with absolutely everything he needs. And I'll insert a photo right here of what Marvin's setup looked like when I first got him. So one thing that I really noticed about Marvin's setup that was really wrong was it only had one plant in it. It was this tree right here. It's a pretty good plant for his enclosure. However, it was the only plant in there. There wasn't a whole lot of coverage. Marvin honestly just looked kind of stressed. So I right away noticed that he definitely needed some more live plants. So I added all of these plants. I have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I currently have 5 live plants in here. Actually 3 bigger ones at the bottom and then 2 smaller ones at the top. And that's something that I would say is more of a con towards the chameleons, is just this entire setup is very expensive. It has to be just right. So chameleons are very picky and very needy. I can kind of explain what's going on in this enclosure. This really bright light at the top, that's going to be his UVB. It kind of simulates what kind of vitamins and stuff he would get from the sun if he were outside. So this came with his enclosure, so I'm thankful that it came with that. And then you might be able to kind of see what's sitting on top of it. That's going to be his fogger. I don't think those are too expensive. It came with that as well. And then in the back is gonna be his heat lamp. That is one thing that took me a really long time to figure out, was the right heat lamp for here, because when I first got him, he did not have a heat lamp at all. And I noticed the first, couple of days, week or so I had him, he was just super dark and he wouldn't really move around. So he was kind of showing signs that he was a little cold, and it took me a lot of bulbs and a lot of trial and error to figure out the perfect bulb for him. So I keep my apartment pretty cold, and I actually ended up going to a 100 watt and moving his branch down a little bit just so he didn't get too close to that bulb, since it's such a high wattage, and it keeps his temperature right where it needs to be. This enclosure is also set up with a misting system, which is really nice because I know those can be a little bit difficult to set up, so I'm glad that was kind of already set up in here. I'm gonna steal this, Marvin. I use one of these to track his temperatures and his humidity, which I noticed that they do really good for humidity and tracking that, but they aren't super great with temperature, so I do use one of the little cord thermometers. And then I have one of the little heat guns, which I use one like this. Every thermometer is going to be kind of a little bit different. They're all going to give you a different reading, but I'll just kind of test the branch really quick. Right around 81.5. So his little branch right there is getting just enough heat that it needs. And maybe this is super accurate, maybe it's not, but it gives me a pretty good idea of kind of where it sits. Another thing in his setup is all of his branches and stuff for his climbing. They're all real. So those already came in his enclosure with him. I kind of rearranged them a little bit to be, try to have more horizontal opposed to vertical, because chameleons don't really climb vertically as much. They're more of horizontal climbers. It could use a little bit more. I plan on getting more. That is one thing that I would say is a major con to one of these guys, is that their setups are super, super, super particular. And everything that he has here, he absolutely needs. So I would never switch to fake plants. Always live plants in this. I've never seen him take a bite out of a leaf, but that doesn't mean that he hasn't. So I would always recommend live plants in these things. His enclosure is equipped with a draining system. So I got this system from Neptune the Chameleon, and then I also talked to owner of Sprinkles the Cam on TikTok. She's super knowledgeable and she's helped me out a lot with my setup. And basically all I did is I have his enclosure on one of these stands, and I drilled holes in the bottom of the enclosure so that all the excess water can kind of drip out and catch in a tub that's underneath there. This is super important because the more water that kind of stands in it, the more bacteria is going to harvest. Moral of this whole big story is that one of the cons I would say is the initial setup. Very expensive, very particular, and chameleons are very needy. They absolutely do not thrive if they do not have everything kind of put in place perfectly. Another thing about owning reptiles that some people see as a con, some people not necessarily, is that he only eats live bugs. I'd say that's not really the most con part of it, but gut loading the bugs can be a little bit of a con. Not only do you have to take care of him, you also have to take care of what he eats. So for example, I keep my super worms in here. I replenish this with fruits and vegetables and all kinds of goodies for his bugs to eat before he eats them, so that he's getting all of the necessary nutrients that he needs from them. Chameleons also have variety in their diet. So he does not just eat superworms. I know that he was previously only fed superworms in the little container that they come in, which is not super ideal for him either. He eats superworms, hornworms, and dubia roaches right now. And then I do want to start keeping crickets a little bit more soon. I used to do it a lot more. He does need variety in his diet or he gets super bored of it. So I noticed that these are kind of his favorite. These are hornworms. They get really big and they're kind of a little fatty. So I don't feed them to him all the time, but he does really like them. Definitely keep these on deck. They're kind of a little treat. I also use them as a part of like getting him to trust me a little bit more, so because he goes crazy for those, which is super cute. Another kind of weird thing that I didn't even realize when I got him was how much I would have to supplement his diet outside of just the bugs themselves. So Marvin also gets a calcium supplement added to his food every time he's fed, and that's without D3. It's dusted on all of his bugs. And then every 2 weeks or so I'll do kind of a multivitamin. He gets Reptivite, and this is with D3, so it's got some more. So all of those goodies is what he's getting through there, and I do that about every 2 weeks or so. So we've talked about some of the cons about having a chameleon, so let's talk about some of the pros. Well, some of the pros I would say is, even though he's very particular, difficult, challenging, it makes any other reptile that I have kind of feel easy. So I also have ball pythons, I have a crested gecko, and then I'm getting a white tree frog soon from an ARBC. Super excited. I'll update that as well. Since he's so needy, it kind of makes the care for the other reptiles seem a little bit easier. So if you put yourself up to the challenge, it kind of makes your other reptiles seem just a little bit easier. Another big pro of having a chameleon is obviously them changing colors. I always kind of like to tell how Marvin's kind of feeling by his colors, which isn't 100% accurate, but a lot of the times I can kind of tell how he's vibing that day with how he looks. So if he's showing more red or like a really bright blues and greens, just really bright colors, I can tell that he is happy, he's not stressed, he's kind of just vibing. That's always cool. I mean, that's one of the coolest things about these guys. So another really interesting thing about chameleons, and I guess that I didn't really realize for most reptiles, is that you really have to build trust with them. When I first got Marvin, obviously he was super stressed, he was super scared. I mean, he's in a whole new environment and I'm this big scary being, you know, I'm this big scary creature. Kind of building trust with him was a really cool part of the process. A lot of different chameleon owners have different ideas or different ways to approach kind of establishing trust with their chameleons. Some people never handle them, some people handle them every day. It just kind of depends, and I support either way. Whatever you want to do, whatever makes you happy. I don't think handling them every day is really an issue. issue as long as you're not stressing them to the point where they're not eating. I do a couple of different things to kind of establish trust with him, which include like kind of just sitting with him. I'll let him kind of see me walk around. I'll sit with him with the enclosure open. I'll just kind of lay my hand in there, and if he wants to crawl on, if he doesn't, kind of leave him alone. Sometimes I will just take him out, show him, you know, you're okay, there's nothing to worry about, and then when he's ready to go back in the enclosure, I always let him. I kind of want him to develop the thought that if I move towards my enclosure, I will be put back in my enclosure. I'm happy that this is his safe space, but building trust with him has been a lot of fun. I would count that as a pro. It can be a con for how much time that it takes, but I think it's a pro because it's super cool. And Kinley, why would you make a video about the pros and cons of having a chameleon? One thing that I would say is there was a point in time where I had acquired him and I completely regretted it. I was like, this is way too much to handle. I bit off more than I can chew. I wish I would have listened a little bit more for people telling me how difficult it was. I regretted it at one point, but I talked to Sprinkles the Cam on TikTok. I found her on Instagram, started messaging with her. I asked her a bunch of questions and she helped me out tremendously. And now that we've kind of found a rhythm here, I absolutely love having a chameleon. So I would never get rid of him. I would probably never get another one. Maybe a baby at some point. It can be super rewarding. They can be kind of fun if you get into it. They are very, very, very particular and you can't skip out on anything. So there's no shortcuts when it comes to taking care of them. No cutting corners by any means. You don't want any of your animals just surviving. You want them thriving. Hopefully this video might have helped you a little bit in either your decision making towards getting a chameleon, or maybe it helped you if you've already gotten one and you're kind of struggling a little bit with some of the setup or some of the care that's going on with that. So hopefully that helped. I hope to be doing a little bit more videos in the future. I do have a total of 5 reptiles right now. I really enjoy it. I'm pretty new, so I don't know absolutely everything. I'm not an expert. I'm always open to constructive criticism, but it's something I've really been getting into recently, and I think I'll be doing it for like a pretty long time. So that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and maybe I'll see you in the next one.